Awesome. Okay, evening everyone. Welcome to the ethics clearance workshop. It's always nice to be at this stage of the process, etc. Who I have online with me today is Jennifer. And we'll be looking at both, the MBA, MPhil research process specifically from an ethical clearance perspective. There's going to be two parts to tonight's conversation, colleagues. The first part is where I'm going to take you through the entire process, from start to end. And then right at the end, we're going to ask for those individuals that are doing healthcare research specifically, or their topic is within the healthcare space, to stay on, and everyone else can leave because there's a slightly different process that will be presented to them from an application process perspective, not from a form perspective upfront. So there's quite a bit of overlap, but those doing research within the healthcare setting specifically, there is a double process because that needs to go to the University of Pretoria's healthcare board to have a look at that. So we'll deal with that one right at the end. Okay. Colleagues, I'm going to ask everyone, please, there is a large number of us obviously on the call here. My count at the moment says just over about 215, 16 people that are online here with us. So what I'm going to ask is at a specific point, by now you should all be very clear on your methodology. Okay, so to please just bear that in mind, because as we go through the ethics process, there's not all of it is relevant for everyone. Okay, so there's going to be pieces for those that are only using secondary data, those that are going to do interviews, those that are going to do surveys. There will be some places where individuals may be saying, Manoj, I'm going to get secondary data from the public domain, etc., and I'm going to interview people. Then you've just got to fill in the relevant portions of the form. I'm going to be dancing between my PowerPoint presentation, colleagues, as well as the ethics clearance form. That form I've got in a PDF is exactly the same as on the system that you will complete. It's just much easier to demonstrate it on a PDF form than it is on the system itself. Okay. So with that, colleagues, I'm going to kick off. A large portion of what I'm going to talk about up front here, or very quickly, is why do we actually need research ethics? Okay. So just from so I'm going to decline this here. From an introduction perspective and research ethics specifically, the first thing I want us to please be aware of is that why do we need it? Really, the Ethics Committee at GIBS specifically is there to preserve and respect the rights, freedom, and well-being of all stakeholders connected to the research project. So that's yourself, that's your supervisor, that's your respondents, or wherever you're going to get data from. That's the Gordon Institute of Business Science, GIBS, and that includes obviously the University of Pretoria as well. So it's really there, and we take a view of preserving and respecting the rights and freedom of all stakeholders. So that's why we really need it. Who sees this at GIBS? GIBS has a research ethics committee, colleagues, which has been established in accordance to the dictate from the University of Pretoria Senate for research ethics and integrity. So what happens, and I'm just going to stop sharing here for a few seconds, is we've got a GIBS ethics clearance committee. The mandate of that ethics clearance committee has been dictated by the University of Pretoria. GIBS is part of the University of Pretoria. But we also have boundaries along which we can operate. So in general, most of the research we can see and we can approve ethics clearance on that. The one that we can't approve ethics clearance on, where we can only give conditional approval on, is for healthcare ethics. But that has to still go through GIBS and then into UP. The remainder of the research we can oversee at GIBS. So that's why we've got the second piece of the session today, really for those that are doing a sort of research within the ethics or within the healthcare industry specifically. Okay, so that's who sees it at GIBS. In doing so, the purpose really of the Research Ethics Committee, your colleagues, is bound by the following ethical principles. Number one, protection of the research participants from risk, harm, or exploitation. Number two, preservation of all the participants' rights, which takes precedence over society's rights in accordance to international academic standard and the University of Pretoria. Number three, reassurance to all stakeholders associated with the research that their rights are maintained. And number four, the protection of the rights and interests of the researcher and GIBS. So that's the principles along which we operate as a Research Ethics Committee specifically. The above, colleagues, does not function in place of an ethically conscious researcher. That is, you must always take responsibility for your human subjects and/or respondents. Please, the ultimate responsibility still sits with you as the researcher. The Research Ethics Committee ensures integrity of GIBS and the University of Pretoria, colleagues. Please, that's our main mandate. What the Research Ethics Committee is not, okay? Number one, we are not responsible for the quality of your research. Please, this has become a big piece for us, specifically as a Research Ethics Committee, and I've just stopped sharing, that individuals often think that because you've got ethical approval, that your study is correct, it's great, etc. I want to be very clear and very firm that we are not there as a quality committee. We will not make a judgment call on whether your proposition, research question, or hypothesis is correct or not. That is not the mandate. Please just be aware of that, colleagues. Do not fall under the pretense that because I've got ethical approval, it must be good and therefore should pass. Please do not, get that at the back of your mind. Please, colleagues, I'm begging you on that, okay? Number two here, let me just share this again. Number two, obtaining ethics clearance does not indicate that your methodology is excellent or good. So when you're not happy with your mark as an example for your methodology, please, as part of your motivation to have it remarked, etc., please don't say, but I got ethical clearance based on this. We are not there to check the quality of your methodology. That is up to you and your supervisor, okay? And obtaining ethics clearance does not indicate that your data collection is correct either. So we don't sit there behind as a second backstop or something between you and your supervisor being able to say, okay, someone else is going to review this, okay? And therefore, the ethics committee, colleagues, is not there to hinder the progress. Now, unfortunately, the first piece here and the first bullet point up here that I say that we're not there to hinder your progress, unfortunately, often what happens when we do decline applications, the first thing individuals tell us is, no, you're just delaying my process of data collection. Well, remember that we need to make sure that the way that you're collecting your data is indeed ethical. That's the first thing and the principle along which we work with. So please, colleagues, when we do, and in many cases it may happen, we will say, please, reject it, and I'll give you what your outcomes could be. Please, you've got to fix X, Y, Z. Please fix it. We're not there to say, hold on, we're trying to delay your process. We are there to take from an ethical perspective. So please just bear that in mind. And I want to be firm on that because often what we do hear is students saying to us that you guys are just delaying the process. I often, as you can see from the background, when I'm walking on campus, someone comes to me and says, Manoj, you guys are just delaying my data collection process. We're not delaying it. We take a very ethical stance on this here. So please bear that in mind, colleagues. Okay. Number two here, let me just go back to my slide so you can see it. Number two, everyone has to obtain ethics clearance, colleagues. Even if you are using publicly available data, aka from the World Bank, etc., that you can go and download right now, you still need to obtain ethics clearance, okay? Failure to obtain ethics clearance and continuing to collect data will result in a fail. Without ethics clearance data collected or ethics clearance, data collected is deemed illegal and the research null and void. Unfortunately, it is the second point down here, colleagues, where as a research committee and in conjunction, obviously, with the research team, that we have to monitor who's got ethics clearance and who doesn't. If you submit your final submission without an ethics clearance, we will not, colleagues, and I'm going to repeat this now, we will not mark that thesis and your research will be deemed null and void. It has happened in the past. At least one or two students thought, no, it would be fine. Unfortunately, guess what, colleagues? We will not allow that, okay? And we will be very headstrong. You can appeal as much as you can, but the data you've collected is deemed illegal. And that's our stance on it here. So the point is, everyone on this call, if you're doing research, doesn't matter the type of research you're doing, you have to get ethics clearance. Please bear that in mind here, okay? With that then, colleagues, let me just share again here. What I do want to take us on to is this next piece here, which is the interaction.
Can I ask a question, Manoj?
Yeah, go for it. Sorry, I didn't see who that is. Yeah.
So if we are using secondary data that we are getting from GIBS that was collected through GIBS an ethical clearance was done when the data was being collected, do we still need to apply for ethical clearance?
Yes, because that data was collected for a different purpose and not the purpose that you're using it for. It is now deemed secondary data.
Even though you are not going to be collecting data, you're going to be using data that's there. You still need ethical clearance. That's what I'm trying to. Okay.
Yeah, that's called secondary data. Okay. Unachi, replace GIBS with the World Bank publicly available data. You still need ethical clearance for it.
Noted.
Cool. Yeah. So colleagues, thanks Unati for that. Can I please ask if do you have questions? I should have said this up front. If we can put it into the chat or raise our hands, I'll stop at specific spaces, just so we can continue with it, because obviously the questions that come will be addressed at different parts as well. Okay. So with that then, colleagues, I do want to just put this up here. You have to have an interaction with your supervisor when you're going through the ethics clearance process. What does that mean? You will complete the form, and it is an online form that you'll complete, and all of that information will be made available to you. You will submit that form online, colleagues. We will not accept a paper-based form. It is all based on a system. What will happen, and here's the process and how it works. Let me just stop sharing here. Is imagine that I am Jennifer. I'm sure you're still online, that I'm Jennifer's supervisor, or Jennifer is my supervisor. What will happen? I will log on to the system. I will complete the ethics clearance form, the various components which we're going to discuss. I will then press submit. When I press submit, what will happen? It will go to my supervisor. In this case, my supervisor is Jennifer. What Jennifer will do, she will get a notification to say that Manoj, your student, has submitted the form. Please review it. Now, what happens in that case? Jennifer reviews as my supervisor. She reviews my ethics application form. Let's assume, because there's two possibilities here. The first one is, Manoj, you've made a mistake. You need to redo this form and you need to fix up question 1 or question 15, whichever it is. What Jennifer will then do as a supervisor is she will click on a piece called rework. When she clicks on rework, she will have jotted down her comments. What will happen then? That form will come back to you. You will then correct what your supervisor has said, and you will press submit again. When you press submit, it will go back to your supervisor. So in the first iteration, there needed to be something fixed. The supervisor sends it back to you. In this, now you fixed it. Your supervisor says, great, I've reviewed it. Then what will happen? Your supervisor will approve it. Now, this is very important, colleagues. The fact that your supervisor approves your application form does not mean that your ethics has been approved. All your supervisor has done is that they have approved it to be looked at and reviewed by the Research Ethics Committee. Does not mean it has been approved, okay? They give approval that the application can be reviewed by the Research Ethics Committee, okay? So you do need to have an interaction with your supervisor with this here, colleagues. So in putting that in writing specifically here, just share my screen. What we see here is your supervisor approves for consideration for ethical clearance. The fact that they've pressed approve does not mean that you have been approved. They've just approved that the application can be sent to the Research Ethics Committee. Okay, so it does not approve, only the Research Ethics Committee approves this, colleagues. This is done by signing your ethics application form online by adding name and date. There's no paper signature required. Okay, so when we use the word sign, they will tick a box and they will add their signature digitally onto it. Please, colleagues, there is absolutely no reason for you and your supervisor to be sending each other emails of things that need to be signed on our ethics application process. Everything is done digitally. Okay. And then the last piece here before we get into the real crux of the ethics here, an important note, colleagues, no GIBS staff member or GIBS research affiliate, including supervisor, members of the research committee, research ethics committee, or management team, will be allowed to sign any confidentiality agreement that may be required by a company or institution used to conduct the research on. What do I mean by that? Sometimes, let's assume that you are going to use data that has been collected by company X. Company X says, we are more than willing to give you the data. However, we need to be assured that all confidentiality of this data will be maintained by the institution. Now, here's the reality, colleagues. I cannot stand surety for you, okay? I cannot stand surety for you. What happens in this case here is that I will simply say no as GIBS because they're handing the data over to you. I don't know what you're going to be doing with that data, so I can't stand surety when they've handed it over to you that you're doing the right thing. So we can't do that, unfortunately. So as GIBS, please, we cannot issue you with a letter that states that this will all be confidential. It will have to be between you and the individuals that are giving the application or getting the data from. Okay. Okay, colleagues, so I'm going to pause there. I see there's a few questions in the chat here. Good evening. There we go. So I've got a question here, but what if the supervisor takes 1 week to turn around? Well, then please tell your supervisor when, and then let your research committee know, or the research team, that your supervisor is taking too long to respond to you. Also, colleagues, we will give you timelines in terms of, when the ethics committee sits. I think it is completely unfair, which is majority of the cases, because we can see this on the system, that you submit your ethics clearance form on a Sunday evening at 9 o'clock at night and expect feedback from your supervisor to make sure that it's done by Monday morning, 8 o'clock, before the system shuts for that week. So work with your supervisor, get in contact, let your supervisor know when are you going to be submitting, so they can also expect that mail to come through or notification to come through, okay? Nokwanda, does the system notify us once the supervisor approves? Yes, but please remember, Nokwanda, that when your supervisor approves, they're simply approving that this application can be reviewed by the Research Ethics Committee. It is not to say that your research or you've got ethical clearance. Please do not make that mistake, okay? Prashana, could we perhaps not get a PDF to do it ahead of time? No, it'll all be done online. No, it'll all done online, so we can record, Prashana, exactly the feedback that is being given and what is being addressed by both student and supervisor as the ethics committee. So we will not be releasing a PDF version that you can use as a, almost like a dummy version, if I can call it that. Okay. Mus is asking, does GIBS have a clause in terms of storage of data? Yes, we do. And that will come up just now when you see the ethics clearance form. You have to keep the data for a period of 10 years. Okay, so that will be on the ethics clearance form as well. Liano is saying, what if the company requires a student to sign an NDA? Can we go ahead? Yes, you can go ahead. If something goes wrong, Liano, then obviously that will be on you, not on the institution. So you will be signing NDAs in your personal capacity because they're handing it over to you. Cool. Brilliant. Love the questions coming through there on the chat, everyone. Okay. So let's get into the crux.
Manoj, there's one you missed from Mkhuzeli. Just go a little bit more up.
I only see read AI stuff here, Jen.
Hold on. I'll read it out for you. What about the risk of GIBS data breach instead of a data breach on the part of the student?
So there's a data breach from the University of Pretoria. We've got all systems in place to deal with that and how we would deal with it from an institution perspective. So as an institution, like any company, we've got formal policies about that. And if there is a data breach, how it will be dealt with specifically. Okay. So I hope that answers that question. Sorry, Jen, I couldn't see it here.
No problem. Yeah. Let me know do you want me to read out the questions?
I've got Kumbula next year. Is it possible
Yes.
to change approved by supervisor to recommend? No, because they can't make recommendations. They can only approve it, that the application can be seen by the ethics committee. They can't recommend that it gets seen. They approve that it gets seen by us. Okay. Who must store the data? Kolile, you must store the data, the researcher. Ultimately, this is your work, your degree, and then when you finally do the final submit, you'll hand over a lot of that all the raw data to the University of Pretoria on a system at the end. So you keep a copy of it and we keep a copy of it, okay? So it's at the end, you'll submit it to us only, but you have to keep a copy for a period of 10 years as well, okay? I don't know who student at GIBS is, where to access the ethics clearance form. That will be in your pages, Jen, and there will be a notification on the process, etc.
Yeah. So links for the ethics clearance system will go live in your respective dates written in your respective pages.
Okay. Priscilla is asking, so if the company wants GIBS to sign an NDA, To warrant that such data protection processes are in place, we can give them the policy, and that's it, Kusile. We can only give you our data protection policy and what rules we use. If the company is not happy with that, unfortunately, that's the process and policy that we follow as the University of Pretoria. So all of that is within our policy. Okay. Well, Jen, I think those are the ones I see here.
There's one last one that just popped up.
When you say raw data, you mean the names of participants as well, or those can be coded for confidentiality. Mpula, if you're more than welcome to code it. You're more than welcome to code the data for confidentiality, but we do need to check that raw data exists, okay? Colleagues, here's the reality. Unfortunately, we have to keep the data. So in case for audit purposes, etc., if someone wants to say, did Manoj really get a PhD? Did he not fabricate this data, etc.? So what we need to see is that that data does exist, okay? Neil, just to be clear, I don't know if it was foggy, Neil. Should all interactions between researcher be? Yes. No, sir. You're more than welcome to have a side chat. You're more than welcome to say, I'm going to do this. Should we sit together, etc. You're more than welcome. But we can only officially deal with what's on the system. Okay. Are we all using the same ethics clearance form, including the yes, Catherine? All of that's the same. There's no difference in them. Data is data. Okay. Must the form be filled in one go? Can it be saved? No. Edward, one time. One time. It's not too long. It's quite a simple form. It ought not to take more than 10 minutes if you know exactly what is required from each section. Okay. Cool. For my colleagues that have done the MBA, so I hope that answers that, Edward. It doesn't take long at all. For the colleagues that have done an MBA specific or have done the PG DIP, it's the same form as you filled in for your applied business project. So we're following exactly the same process as well. Ethics is ethics, especially when we're collecting data. Okay. Pauline, we are going to get there. We are getting into the details, so I'm going to leave that question for just now. Okay. So Jen, let's get into it here. So colleagues, what I'm going to ask you to think about right now is the type of data and how do you plan on collecting data? Okay. So you'll see on my slide here that I've got types of ethics, right? So as you can all imagine, is that given the type of data you're going to be collecting, there's going to be different requirements that the ethics committee has to see in order to be able to provide ethical approval or not. Okay. Now, when I think about this, and before I go to my next page here, what I'd like you all to embed at the back of your minds, think about Pauline's question here. How am I going to be collecting data? Am I going to, number one, go and get data from a company? So I'm going to use X company and I'm going to use company-specific data. Or number two, I'm going to send a survey out to the general public or even within a company, okay? Am I going to collect data through a survey? Or am I going to collect data through a interview? So I'm going to interview people, structured, semi-structured, whatever it may be. So wherever there's going to be interaction with people, or am I going to collect some publicly available data? So we've got company-specific data, primary data that you and I are going to collect either through surveys and or interviews, and then we've got publicly available data as well. But then we may go and we say, okay, there's another type of data, which is essentially around saying, what if I want just the marketing reports of a company and I'm going, or a set of companies, I'm doing a comparative study like Pauline is here, what type of data am I going to look at? So at GIBS, what we do recognize is that there are these different types of data collection. Okay. The first one here, colleagues, is pre-existing personal records. Okay. Now, if you are going to collect data of Manoj's performance reviews as an example from an organization because they're pre-existing already, then you're going to submit to us the methodology section of your proposal, the description of the nature of the records that you are going to be using, and we need a permission letter from an appropriately authorized person in the organization to use that data. Okay, now imagine you're going to do that. We don't often see it, but there may be, given the large number of individuals on the call today, there may be one or two or a few of you that are going to collect pre-existing personal records. If you are going to collect pre-existing records as part of your data collection, so it's pre-existing already, so it exists already, Manoj's performance review from last year as an example. If that is the case, colleagues, then you will complete only section A here. If you are not going to collect data via a a survey or interviews, there's no reason to complete the other points, the other blocks here. So you only complete the section, either section A, section B, upfront on this form here, section C, section D, if it relates to your study. Okay, what do I mean by that? And I'm just going to stop sharing and show you the form here. I've got a form on a research study that I am busy with at the moment. Just say share so we can see it. Okay, so you'll see here, we are busy with a study here, everyone. Now you will see, we are interviewing individuals. So we are collecting new data from human subjects through interviews in this case here. Can you see, colleagues, we did not complete section A. We only complete section B because that's the only relevant section to what we are doing from a research perspective. So now if I stop sharing, and what I ask you to think about is, what type of data am I collecting? It may be possible that you are collecting both A, pre-existing records, personal records, and you're going to do interviews. Then you just complete section A and section B. Okay, so you only complete the sections that are relevant to your study. That's the first thing I want everyone to please, please, please be completely aware of. Okay. Now, for each type of data that you are going to collect, colleagues, there are different requirements which are set up here in the boxes. Then you've got to select. Let's assume now I'm going to collect new data from human subjects. Doesn't matter whether it's quant or qual. I need to then say, here's the methodology section of the proposal. I'm going to tick that box. I'm going to tell you, here's my informed consent. I'm going to tick that box. Let's assume that there's an interview guide. Tick that box there. Because I'm not using a pre-existing proprietary test instrument like an MBTI, I will not select that box. Okay. To show you, colleagues, what you may be rejected for. Imagine this is your study and you are collecting new data through interviews, and you do not select the first box that says methodology section of the proposal. We will send your ethics clearance form back. Colleagues, we will send it back because it's an incomplete application process. Okay, so please just make sure you understand, number one, the type of data you're collecting, and number two, make sure that all the relevant boxes are ticked. Now, in certain cases, that's where most individuals go wrong, is that they don't select the most appropriate boxes given the type of data that they are trying to collect here. Okay, so at GIBS, we do formally look at these 4 types, which is number A, pre-existing personal records, number B, new data solicited from human subjects, number C, here, public non-human data, example, the World Bank, and D, private organization-specific non-human data. Okay, so you've got to select which one makes sense for you. Everyone will also complete section E here to indicate whether your methodology is qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods. And that relates to how you're collecting your data technically. Okay. So the point here, colleagues, what does this mean? Ethics is ethics. Unfortunately, it is, but we have different types of ethics based on the nature of data that you're collecting or you'll be using. How will we know what type of data you're collecting? For each and every type of data collection, just have a look at this, either A, B, C, or D. Each and every one of them, the methodology chapter is required for each and every type. So we will then go through your methodology and have a look at what type of data are you planning to collect based on your methodology. So you have to submit your methodology section at a minimum with your application. This is even the methodology that you have submitted with your proposal. If it changes at some stage later, so let's assume I'm supervising Jennifer now, and we agreed that we're going to do quantitative research. We go, we get ethical clearance, and then all of a sudden we realize, hold on, maybe we need some interviews as well. So now we've moved from quant to a mixed method. Then what you need to do is resubmit for ethical clearance. Remember, we've given you ethical clearance based on the methodology that you submitted with your method that you submitted. Okay. So if it changes at some stage later on, please resubmit for ethical clearance. Okay. I'm going to stop here because I want to get into deep diving into each and every one of these sections here, A, B, C, and D. So let me start sharing. I saw a few chats coming up. So let me start here. Okay, Pauline, will come to yours. Fundiswa, we will speak about that when we get to the section. It is someone who has authority in the organization. Captain is saying, if you're collecting data through interviews as primary collection and using company documents, policy, websites, press releases, analysis for triangulation, then you are. So which should you tick? Or as well, then let's think about that. Let's go back here, Captain. Is Captain, where are you? Can you come off mute, Captain? I can't see where Captain is. Captain? You there, Captain? Captain, are you there? The sound is very bad. Captain, let's be clear.
Hello.
You said, yeah, okay. Yes, I can. So let's work through this one quickly together, Captain. I'm going to
Yes,
delete
can
all
you
of
hear
the...
me? I'm here.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. So let's work with this together here, right, Captain? To your question. Let's look at this here. So it says that you said you are going to collect data using primary data, right? So you're going to be interviews. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you're going to tick this box here. Can you see new data solicited from human subjects? Agreed?
Okay.
Methodology. Then you need an informed consent
Yes.
statement. Then you need your
Okay.
interview guide. I'm
Okay.
assuming that you've come up with the questions yourself. So let's assume it's not pre-existing. Okay. Then the second thing says
Yes.
you're using company documents. Am I right?
Correct.
Do you see here private organization specific non-human data? Number D.
Yes.
What does that say? Methodology section, an explanation of the nature of the data and how will you source it and how will you use it.
Okay. All right. Now I see.
So colleagues, as you can see, like I said, if you've got two different ways, simply go through each part and say, okay, I've got interviews here, but then I've got to select B and D. In the case of Captain here, he's just got to select B and D, and it must be shown in the methodology as well. Okay. So I hope that answers your question.
All right.
Okay. Cool.
It does. Thanks a million.
Go. Okay, let me go here. I've been kicked out of the meeting. Okay, Jen will sort that out. Pokeng, it seems that this methodology, yeah, is compulsory. You read that correct, Pokeng. That's what I said. So every section, you'll definitely need that as an option to be ticked. You must. So this is an interesting one, Pokeng. The reason we ask you is for you to make it cognizant that actually by selecting it. So what may happen is that if you don't select it, then your application is incomplete. So you've got to select, and it provides a reminder for you that you must select it. Okay. So it is needed, unfortunately, and it is a legal document that we have to work with here, and that's the guidance we get from the University of Pretoria. Okay. Neil, can you tick boxes in anticipation? And this, no, you can't, Neil. You can't do that. This is not for I hope and I will and I do. We will hold you accountable that you got ethical clearance for A, B, C, D, E or A, B, C, D. Where is all of that data? Okay, so you can't just decide to do that. Michelle, sorry, Neil, that's yeah, that's not one of those, right? That I can just fill in what I want, and whenever I get it, I'll use whatever I get. Unfortunately, I think you're missing the point of ethics, Neil. It's actually based to preserve the rights of our respondents and all our stakeholders. And this is not just another process to complete. So I think we should just think about that carefully. Michelle is saying for the teaching case, do you select mixed method? Well, Michelle, if you're collecting two different types of data and it is mixed method in your methodology, you select mixed method. Does that make sense? Okay. So Sagan says if your methodology changed from the proposal submitted but change the version is submitted. Oh, Sagan, no. So if we're looking at the data collection, not the version of it. Obviously, it's going to change from proposal to final. So as long as the data collection remains quantitative or quant at proposal, quant at the final, we're happy with it. Okay. Tavani, no, you don't. You could submit the one that you use for your proposal. Okay, so it's the same one that you have submitted for your proposal. Neo, do we have to attach the measurement instrument? Neo, yes. Neo, is Neo online? Here's Neo. Neo? Neo, are you there?
Hi,
Neo?
Manoj.
Hello, can you
Can
see
you
my
hear
screen,
me?
Neo? Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Protection of the research participants from risk, harm, or exploitation. If I can't see your questions that you're going to be asking them, I can't protect them from risk, harm, or exploitation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So that's why I just take it in context there. For the hands, I'm coming to your hands shortly. Okay, Neil is laughing. Yeah, Neil, not zonke zonke. Let's be ethical here. This is so no. Yeah, that's a great question. Sorry, it says TN Kumaleni for pre-existing proprietary. So if you've taken your questionnaire out of an academic article, no, that's not proprietary. You just reference it appropriately. Okay. Proprietary is things like your MBTIs, your psychometrics that belong to a company and they say copyrighted to a company. Okay. Faria is asking, do you need a letter of permission if you use this? No, Faria, no, you don't. It's the same question as the one above. Is there a template for permission letter from an authorized section under A to use personal records? No, you've got to outline that letter to say this is the student, this is their number, this is their title, these are the records I'm handing over, and then we need that permission letter, okay? And it has to be on a company's letterhead as well. Let's say, Sharks is asking, let's say the primary way to collect data is interviews, but the company is willing to share financial statements, then that will be used, but the chances are slim. Sharks, where are you? Let me kill this one immediately. Sharks, are you there?
Yes, Manoj.
You know what the answer is, nah? You guys are chance takers here. So Sharks, no. If you get it, you know when you can collect data, right? You're going to collect it with a purpose. Now, assume they're going to give you that. Now it's non-specific. You've got to get ethical clearance for that. Otherwise, we're going to look at that and say, so Sharks, when did you collect this data? Can you see the problem that we sit
So
with?
even if the chances are slim, still say there is
If
a
you're
chance.
going to, no, but if you're going to collect it, is it a primary way of you collecting data? You need that
No.
marketing report. Well, then why are you asking for ethical clearance? Because then we're going to want to know how you're going to get access to it, how you're going to store it, all of that. Can you see that?
Yeah, so I think that's my question. Should I then rather not do it than just do interviews? Is that almost easier?
Not
Okay.
easier. It's what's going to help you answer your research question.
Yeah.
Not that
Okay.
extra. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Manoj.
Cool. Let's go to Kumbula. If you are using pre-existing, I think I've answered that one, Kumbula. Methodology. Yeah, I don't know. Student is at Gibbs. The methodology shall be submitted as an appendix of the ethics. Yeah, it's an attachment that you put up there. Pula, yeah, we're going to get there. Pula, we'll see yours shortly. Tsela is asking if I'm using the data that feeds into stats to justify. No. So Tsela, remember, this is data you're collecting for analysis, okay? So you're going to analyze the data, not pre-processed data that you have now done for your introduction or background, okay? It's the data that you are going to collect to answer your research question, okay? Prashana is asking, which section would you need completed if you're doing surveys in a single organization? Would it be then section A and D? Prashana, do you mind coming off mute?
There we go. Hi, Manoj.
How are you?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, shall we work through that together? Okay, now let's look at the form. So your
Okay.
question was, let me bring up the chat here. Where are you? There we go.
Sorry, I actually
So
mean
you're doing-
section B and section D. Sorry, not A.
Okay, so now so you're sure you have to fill in section B. Make sense?
Yeah,
Does that
because
make
that will be
sense? Okay.
new data. Okay, that's fine.
Now, is it in a single organization that you're getting
Yes.
data from? Yeah, so we need a
Yes.
letter from them. So it's A and D.
A and D.
Right,
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, B and D. I'm reading your message.
B
It's
and
B
D, yeah.
Yeah, B&D.
Cool.
Yeah.
B and D. Thank you.
Cool. Brilliant. Okay. There was a hand up. Let me take the hand, then we can get into A and all of those. Okay, Palesa, go for it.
Manoj, I think you've answered my question, but I just need clarity. So
How?
no, but just hear
You
me
know
out.
this one, there's a few I love. I just want to make sure. Why? Yeah.
I'm doing quant, and obviously you can't come up with your own instrument, right? Your survey questionnaire. If, for example, you're doing Ubuntu leadership, my question was, do I now need to go get permission to use it from Idai Moshuveri as an example? But I think you clarified it to say that it's only for psychometric assessments that you would need get that.
So let's assume, Balas, that's a great question. So you've got it from an academic journal article, right?
Yes, correct.
No need. It's not
Okay.
copyrighted, right? Can you see
Okay,
that?
perfect, perfect.
Cool. Okay.
Thank you.
Right, colleagues, let's focus. Let's get into each and every section so you know. And I love these questions because it's really showing that you are clear on which type of data you're collecting. Okay. So let's start with type A, which is pre-existing personal records here, colleagues. So in this case here, you've selected A on this form here. So you've only selected A for now. So let's just keep it simple. What you then need to do is only complete the questions that come part of Form A, okay? Which will ask you to specify the nature of records, how will they be used. Confirm that permission has been obtained to study on the, and report on these records. You have to press on confirm and remember to attach the permission letter because this is human data, pre-existing personal records of a company as an example. We want to know who the person is who has authorized the use of these records, what's their name and what's their job title, okay? So if anytime someone says, hold on, but I didn't give permission, we're going to go and say this person with that job title, with this permission letter, provided the student with access to it. So if anything goes wrong, we know who to go to, okay? And then number 4 here, how will confidentiality and anonymity be assured? I promise you we're going to deal with the difference and similarities of confidentiality and anonymity later on. Okay, so you've got to complete the first 4 questions. So let's assume, Prashana, you're only going to collect A. Just for now, you're only collecting A. Only complete this first section under A, these 4 questions, okay? So again, the nature of data is pre-existing personal records. What do we need from the ethical clearance and consent requirements? You've got to submit an approved and signed permission letter from the relevant organization or individual or individuals whose data you're going to be using. Now, in many cases, if we think about performance review, the organization says, no problem, here's all of our employees within a specific division. You're more than welcome to use it. You're more than welcome to then get an organizational level permission letter. But if you're going around, hustling around and saying, people, can I please get your last year's performance? Then you need the individuals to give you permission to access and use those records, okay? Please, colleagues, I do want us to be clear, and I'm just going to stop sharing here, that you still need to submit your methodology section. So that's a basis. We've covered it. Everyone has to submit their methodology chapter, okay? So I'm not going to keep repeating methodology. I'm going to share the live form now very quickly. Let me just find it. Where's my form gone? There we go. Press share. Let's assume you've only done A here. All you're going to do is select A. So I'm going to click on A here. I'm just going to click all 3. And what's going to happen then? I will just go down and I will complete these questions. The nature is a performance review. I'm just writing this in here so you can see what you would put in there. Obviously, give us some more detail. I'm going to press confirm here. The person who gave me is XYZ. Their job title is Chief Entertainment Officer. And in the event the individual data will be reported, how will confidentiality? I'll just say no names, and we will speak about these just now. If it's another way, I'm just going to put that reason in there. Now, because you're only using section A, colleagues, please do not complete section B. You do not need to go to section B. You do not need to complete section C. You do not need to complete section D. You can jump to the end of the form that says section E here. So everyone will complete section E. In this case, we're going to say free access to everyone. How will the data be stored? I confirm it will be stored for a period of 10 years. If you do not confirm that, colleagues, we will reject your application and you will have to confirm to ensure that what methods you will be using to store it for a period of 10 years. Confirm that the details of your data storage are in your method. I click that. So section E and F you have to complete. Let's just say I don't want it on TV. And then question 27, confirm it's aligned, and question 28, okay? And then that's it. So if you're collecting only pre-existing, and I'm scrolling up quite quickly, pre-existing personal records, only complete section A, and then complete section E and F. E and F, colleagues, is for everyone. Every person on this call will complete section E and F. Okay. Any questions, colleagues, on that? Any questions on pre-existing personal records? Okay, Sas, go for it.
Sorry, maybe while we're there, Manoj, it's not a question on the pre-existing records, but rather the section F that you also went to on the storage. So if I'm using secondary data from a company, I know we're getting to section D, but typically section D, and the company obviously retains the intellectual property and says you can use it for the research, but once the project is finished, you need to, either hand back the data or destroy it. I can keep the records of the analysis that I've done, but not the raw data that the company has given me access to. How do we deal with that?
So we'll need a letter from them stating that that's the reason and why they want it done, because by default, you need to keep that data, the raw data, for a period of 10 years, and we need to upload it as evidence that actually the calculations you did were based on that. So let me give an example. A few years ago, we've had this many times. The chapter 5 wasn't making sense. And when we went back to the raw data, the student fabricated the data. Now imagine that doesn't happen 2 years, or now it happens 5 years down the line. You have an auditor who says, actually, we want to check that did you actually follow process for SAS, and that you've issued him with a degree essentially. And we say, here's the data, here's the raw data, and we can give it.
Yeah,
And
in that case, if I'm not allowed to keep the data, obviously you can go back to the company, get the raw data from them, and you could audit it that way.
But we would need a letter saying that that's the only conditions, and then as an ethics committee, we will deliberate, is this worth the risk that 5 years down the line, the person or the company doesn't exist, or actually maybe something has gone horribly wrong here.
Thank you.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay, cool. Let me go to the question here. Is the selection you demonstrated for section E applicable to entrepreneur? Yeah, it's applicable to everyone. Where you want free access, if you want an embargo, etc., you just tell us. Okay, so section E is applicable to everyone, colleagues. Doesn't matter the type of data, doesn't matter your specialization, doesn't matter. You have to complete section E and you have to complete section F. Please, colleagues, you have to complete it. Okay, we will reject an ethics application and that's it. But you select a 2-year embargo? Here, Jennifer will deal with that one just now for specific streams. You can, but Kuseli, I want to start with, and I'm assuming you're part of entrepreneurship. That makes sense for entrepreneurship because you want your IP, etc., not, so you can launch the business, etc. But our default, so for entrepreneurship, yes, and Jennifer will speak about that just now. But in general, we are part of an academic institution, and the reality is that we're in the game of knowledge dissemination. So if you require an embargo, then what we need is actual special permission to be signed off by the University of Pretoria's Dean for Research. I keep forgetting the official title, to say that, hold on, we want this work embargoed and why we want it embargoed for a period of time. Okay. So, that's also, and I always got to say this, colleagues, and I know it's not a nice thing to say, when you say embargo, even if I say free access, that doesn't mean if you got 50% that we're going to put it into the public domain. Okay, so it's really just to protect if you do get above X amount and we do publish in the public domain. Okay, so Cecilia will deal with entrepreneurship just now. Jennifer will also give input on that. Okay, Mapule is saying, but in the methodology, the literature advises us to remove names. Yeah, so Mapule. Yeah, Mapule, where are you? Are you online? Let me explain this. Mapule, where are you?
Please do. I am online and quite concerned about the confidentiality piece and giving raw data when it's one of the ways that, literature says you can remove names. But then
let me explain it simply. Your reporting is confidential. Can you see that? Does that make sense when you report the data?
Oh, okay. All right. Then I guess we have to be clear with the participants that they're reporting, but their data will still be made available to the university.
The university will not use it for any other purpose, but for auditing purposes. We will not go in there. I'm not going to go in there and say, oh, cool, there's some really nice data. Let me use it. Can you see that?
That's fine. Understood. Yeah. Thank you.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
Dineo. Yeah, Dineo, you can put it in the consent letter. No problem at all. If they request that the data deleted, no. We need it to be stored. If they say, no, I don't want my data stored, no, we still need it, okay? then you will have to move on to the next, unless they can give a compelling, rational decision that the ethics committee will then review and say, okay, maybe, but we will not look at it. That is a very rare exception. And Dineo, what you're raising, what was raised ahead as well, the company wants, it's never happened in the history of GIBS. So if it is a new request, we will deal with it. But we do have the process and the policy. Most of the time is that, unfortunately, we need evidence that that data was collected. So we do need to be able to see it. We need to hear it or see it to be able to say, okay, that actually Dineo did collect data here. Okay, so you don't just go ahead. Remember that you will store the data, and that's what you're putting on your ethics application form. Colleagues, you must be careful. There's a few pieces that I see that we're trying to treat separately. The first thing is, what is the role of the ethics committee? Number two, what the application states is that we need that data stored. We are going to assure confidentiality, anonymity, and then what you're promising your participants. They've all got to speak together, and that's how we've got to deal with it under the process of the University of Pretoria. Okay. Cool. Liano, are we going to go into detail what raw data looks like for qual research? Liano, raw data in a qual research is the audio recording and or the transcript. I don't know what other raw data there is for qual. Okay, unless you're going document analysis, you submit the documents. If you're doing qualitative secondary data analysis there, but that's what it is. Okay. Does one have to explain the method for maintaining? Sile, are you there?
Yes, Manoj, I'm here.
Cool. Let me just find my form. Where did my form go? Where did my form go? Let me just say cancel here. Go. Let me show this here. Go. Please confirm, sorry, the spelling's wrong there, that you will use appropriate methods to ensure your data is safely stored in an accessible format for a period of 10 years, 24. Confirm the details of your data storage method are set out in the attached methodology chapter. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. Right, so that's section A, everyone. Let's go into type B. Probably the one that is most used, everyone. Most. There we go. Okay, so human data collected, colleagues here. So we're going to speak to people. So I'm going to start with interviews. We'll get to questionnaires just now. So your new data solicited is through an interview. The ethical clearance requirements and the consent requirements is we need the interview schedule. Now, I know, colleagues, it's a horrible term. Please, that's why I write it on my slide here. When we ask you for the interview schedule, it's not the dates and names, rather just a list of the structured or semi-structured questions that will be asked. So that question someone asked me earlier, and I said, yes, we do need to see your interview guide that is going to be used, or a facilitator guide, whichever you're going to be using to collect your data. Okay, so we want to see the guide. It's called a schedule, but technically all it is, colleagues, is a list of the questions. Okay. Individual participant consent requirements. What we do require here is for you to submit a pro forma consent letter. Those pro forma consent letters are found in the various books. For the MBA's green book or the blue book or the purple book, for MPhil specifically. So just have a look at your research books that we have where our pro forma consent letters are in there. Because it is an interview, you can only offer confidentiality. That will become apparent later when I explain the difference between confidentiality and anonymity. Okay, a signature is required by the participant and the researcher on that pro forma form. So the consent form simply tells the individual, this is the title of our research and what we require from it. And we'll touch on consent forms a bit later on. Okay. When you're collecting data through an interview, semi-structured interview to a large extent, you need a place for the person you're interviewing to sign, as well as you as the researcher. Let me give a practical example of that. Right now, I'm busy doing some qualitative research. For those of you that know me, please don't fall down, but I've been going out and interviewing people around AI, etc., right now. And I've got a consent form. What does the consent form tell them? Number one, what is the research about? Very high level, 2 sentences. Number two, how much time I require from them. Number three, I offer them confidentiality. In other words, whatever you say, I'm not going to let out into the public domain, and nothing will be attributed back to you. Full confidentiality. At the bottom, I've got my name. I've got my boss's name technically because they need someone to complain to if I do something wrong. It's got a place for a signature of the respondent, or my participant, so they can sign that they've acknowledged the consent and dated. And at the bottom, because I'm the researcher, I will also sign as well. So the consent form, there is a pro forma in the different books, and you'll see it. What we are looking for from an ethics committee perspective here, colleagues, is quite simply around saying, hold on, can we see the pro forma consent letter that is going to be used? So we need that, okay? I've seen very fancy versions flying around, colleagues. Let me just stop sharing, of consent statements. And then there's a few pieces that are missing. And then someone decided to add in GDPR plus POPIA plus. And then we sit there as an ethics committee and say, no, rejected. There's far too much going on here. So what we often say, and I can see when a template has been circulated, either on the WhatsApp group or from one person to the other from last year or the year before, we see the same format being used, and most of the time we reject it. Have a look in your pages of your books specifically and just use that pro forma. It contains all the relevant components of it. You simply have to type it up and it's good to go. Okay, so that's when you're going out to interview people. Now what happens, colleagues, for those of you that are going to send out a survey as an example, what do you do then? So I'm sending out new data and I'm going to collect it via questionnaire. What do we need? We need a questionnaire to be provided. So what are the questions you're going to be answered, at least in Word format, okay? So any format, Excel, Word, we need to see the questions you're going to be asking. This doesn't mean if you are using some software to collect it that it must be on there yet. We don't need to see it on that. We just need to see the questions. We're not worried about the platform. We are worried about the questions that are going to be asked, okay? If you are going to be sending out a survey or a questionnaire here, what we require is for you to submit, obviously, your methodology as for every type of data you're collecting. Here we want to see the questionnaire, as well as we want you to submit a pro forma consent form offering anonymity. We will, like I said, we will deal with anonymity and confidentiality just now. Okay, so that's the second type here. Now, if you're doing both quant and qual, what you'll then need to submit, and we'll pick it up when you say mixed methods, you'll see on the form just now which sections you need to tick here. Obviously, because you're sending out a questionnaire here, colleagues, there's no reason and no need for a signature. It will be the landing page if you're using it electronically, or it'll be the first thing a participant sees. The fact that they just move on and they continue asking is already acknowledgement that they agree to it. Okay, so that's for a questionnaire. For proprietary instrument, colleagues, like I said, not for the instruments that you are getting from an academic journal article. Think about Mind Garden for your MBTIs, your psychometrics, etc. Imagine using a proprietary test instrument. What we require then is for you to submit a approved and signed permission letter to use the proprietary test instrument. So imagine, and I'm sure all of you have done, you know, whether you're green, blue, I forget what that is, one of those insights tools as an example. Those are proprietary questionnaires. If you're going to use it, no problem, but we need a permission letter from the company saying you are more than welcome to use it. So what do we require from our side? We require you to submit a pro forma consent form again, that we can see confidentiality has been assured, and a signature is required by the participant and the researcher, specifically when you're using a proprietary instrument. Okay. And then the last one here, colleagues, is an intervention, which some people do, is that, you know, we're going to do a pre and a post. How was someone's performance? We're going to do some intervention, example, training. What we require is for you to submit approved and signed permission letter to allow the intervention from a relevant organization. And then number 3, we need you to submit a pro forma consent letter offering confidentiality, and a signature is required by the participant and the researcher because they're going to be looked at. Okay. What I'm going to do is show you the questions here, colleagues, and I'm going to go through them quickly one by one. So if you're going to do interviews or send out a survey, or you're doing interviews and sending out a survey, so it's new data that you're collecting, you're going to select section B. Remember, the first thing you need is your methodology chapter, which must be submitted with all types here. Then you're going to go to question 5. Please confirm that no inducement to participate is offered. If you do not select this, we will need details on the inducement that is being offered and why it's being offered. Okay? By default, there is no inducement that is being offered. So we expect to see that you tick here, I confirm. Now, when we talk about inducement, whether you're buying a cup of coffee, a bottle of water, that we don't know, is that being seen as an inducement? So what we say, please confirm that no inducement to participate is offered. So you don't promise people a Takealot voucher or something like that for participating in your survey or your interview, okay? That's our default. If we do not see that selected, we want to understand what is that inducement, etc. around that. So let's assume, colleagues, and the first thing I'm going to go through is imagine we're doing qualitative interviews here. So we're going to interview people with a semi-structured set of questions. I will then, under question 6, simply tick interview schedule. Remember what interview schedule is. It's just a list of the questions. It is not that I'm going to speak to X person on Y date. It is just a list of the questions, and you need to attach that so we can see it. You're not sending out a questionnaire. It's not pre-existing. It's not an intervention. So I simply select interview schedule. Then you've got to press confirm that the data is gathering is accompanied by a consent statement. You have to confirm that, and we want to see that consent statement, okay? Where would the consent statement be found? As part of a data gathering document. As an example, we say introduction of the questionnaire, or you say I'm doing interviews, it's going to be a separate document, so I simply select that second one down there, okay? Number 9, is there a risk the researcher is not competent in one of the language or languages the subject used to communicate? If you say no, we trust no. If you say yes, then you must tell us how will full comprehension of the content of the research, including giving consent, be ensured. Then we'll go to number 10. Do the subjects risk possible harm or disadvantage by participating? If you say no, we move on. If you say yes, explain what type of risks and what is being done to minimize or mitigate those risks. Question 11 then, colleagues, are there any aspects of the research about which the subjects are not to be informed? If the answer is no, great. If it's yes, explain why. And then number 12, which deals with this whole thing about confidentiality and anonymity, will be assured, and we'll select the appropriate ones. I will explain anonymity and confidentiality later, and we'll revisit this here. Now let's quickly assume, colleagues, here that we're doing quant. So let me just delete all of that quickly. If we are doing quants here, colleagues, so I'm sending out a survey. If I was doing both, I would obviously tick both, but let's assume quickly I'm doing quants. I confirm no inducement, please fill it in, it's on LinkedIn, etc. I'm going to say my questionnaire is there. I'm going to confirm that the data gathering is consent statement. In this case, because it's a quant, I'm going to tick here. It says part of the data gathering document. Is there a risk? No, it's no risk at all. There's no harm. I'm just going through quickly, section 10 or 11. Yes, there is. That there'll be a piece that they're not informed. I'll explain why. And then question 12, I'm not going to report any names. I'm not going to ask them for their names. I'm going to store the data without identifiers, and only aggregated data will be provided. Now what happens if you say, Manoj, I'm going to do mixed quant and qual? Well, then I simply say interview schedule. I'll tick here as both as a separate document and as part of the data gathering document. As you'll see later, they're slightly different. Assume the rest will all remain the same, and that's all you will complete. Let's go to the last 2 questions here. If you're collecting new data, number 13, will audio or video recorded data be transcribed or translated by an independent transcriber or translator? If it's yes, please, we've got a non-disclosure agreement. Please remember to attach the pro forma non-disclosure agreement, okay? And then here, and you've just got to confirm it, how will confidentiality and or anonymity sort of be maintained of the respondents and their data be assured? You just tell us which ones are appropriate. Okay, so colleagues, that's the biggest one, type B. So let's deal with type B. Any questions on type B? Okay, I'm going to go to Leon, and then I'll take Hans on a recording of the consent next to Leon, so that's an interesting one. I've been doing some of that right now. Leon, you know what I do is I email them the consent and ask them to send it back. It's the easiest way to do it, Leon, just in case with tech something goes wrong. I had that problem yesterday on a Teams call where we were all convinced it was recording and it didn't record. Okay, so just please be careful of that, Leon. Lucky we sent the consent form ahead of time and they did send it to us as well. So Leon, just be aware of that. I hope that answers it. Jacques, do we need all the participants? Yep. No. So Jacques, do you want to just come off mute? That's a brilliant question.
Yes.
Jacques? Okay. So what we need for ethics clearance application, we just need to see the pro forma. What is a pro forma? It's just the template that's going to be used.
Okay.
Remember, you're still going to collect the data, right?
Yeah.
We've got to give you permission to collect data. That's technically what we're doing here.
Okay.
So you can only give us the template that you're going to use. Does that make sense? When you do the
Yeah.
final
So if I want to
submission,
do, obviously, yeah. Okay. So
Makes
just
sense.
basically the letter they will sign. Okay.
That's it.
Cool.
That's it. Obviously, you're going to have 10, 15 of them. Okay, so it'll be pre. Fundiswa, should the
thanks.
questionnaire be, yeah, cool. Should the questionnaire be complete, the final version to, and it must be tested pre. Fundiswa, do you mind coming off mute?
Hi, Manoj.
Hello. So that's a great question, Fundiswa. And can I tell you why I'm happy that you're asking this question? Because it actually shows you're going to pre-test your questionnaire. Okay. Now this is where it almost sounds like a problem. Okay. So unfortunately, you're not allowed to pre-test your questionnaire until we've given you permission to do so. In other words, you've got ethical clearance. Does that make sense? Because remember, I need to preserve the rights, etc., of my respondents or the participants. So I need to see what you're asking them. So you get ethical clearance, pre-test. Now, so don't run away. How? Hey, we are not finished right now. Okay.
I'm still here.
Now let's assume you pre-test and you realize question 22 and 23 are no longer needed. Can you see you're going to delete them? Then you don't need ethical clearance. You don't need to come back to us because we approved the full set. Can you see that? You're just not going to use them. But now let's assume you decide, I want to add a question on. I want to see that question. So you have to resubmit them.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, got it.
Brilliant. Okay. Would an email from the author of the instrument provide? Yeah, Faria, no problem at all, as long as it gives us their signature, etc. at the bottom, saying that they do give it, so it is perfectly fine. Please, it mustn't come from manojchiba@gmail.com. It must come from manoj@my company. So it's not just something that has been made up. So that Faria will be accepted. What if the interviews are online and transcribed by the tool? Happiness, then there's NDA and Kusile. Now, do you want to come off mute, Kusile?
Yes.
Okay. Does your Teams assure you that all data will remain confidential when you are recording and transcribing it? That Microsoft will not be using that data for any other purposes?
I have to check the T's and C's. I don't know offhand.
Yeah. So you've got to be careful because you're offering confidentiality there. Do you see where that problem comes in? So
to date, the advice has been no.
Sorry?
The advice has been don't use online tools, just from your experience.
No, you're more than welcome, but just understand what you are giving up and what you're promising your participant. If you're promising them confidentiality and the tool is going to be using that data, you've breached that piece there of consent.
I'm saying from an ethical clearance perspective,
yeah,
if that's how I'm conducting the interviews, will I get feedback to say, what do the T's and C's say about this? And would that have an impact on the granting of ethical clearance?
No, if you tell us you're going to use MS Teams and it's going to be transcribed by MS Teams because it's got a transcription capability, we trust that that will be in line with your consent form. If there's ever a problem that it gets out, we will come back to you and say it wasn't in line. Your participant MR is now suing you for $100 million. Good luck, Mkusile. You promised them confidentiality, you breached it. We have nothing to do. I can't stand surety for that, and I can't stand surety for Microsoft either.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. Does Gibbs have a template? Yeah, Princess, we do have a, for transcribers, we do. So that will be shared. Once clearance is provided, changes. Yeah, so booking. So I think we want to see your broad questions. Obviously, in an interview, you probe on some, etc. As long as it will be within that set, we're perfectly fine with it. You don't need to come back to us unless it changes vastly. Is an audio recording sufficient as a form of permission? No, you see, that's that one. I'm just going to say, I want to say no. We need to see if they've signed that consent form. Please just make sure that you've got their signature on that they have actually read it, they consent to it, and they send it back. So I promise you, colleagues, I've been doing a large number of interviews. No one has a problem in signing the consent form. Okay. Paul, we're going to come to that one just now because it's not how long it actually it's when you submit, etc., and what's the process that we follow, which we will explain just now, okay? And then on the pre-test weight, is there any way you can discuss a survey to check that they've resonated before submitting with an industry personnel? So now you're going to look at the validity. So the TN Kumaleni, do you want to come off mute?
Hi, Prof. It's Tiz. Just a quick one because I definitely get the sense that you cannot obviously do, run a full pre-test. But if you just wanted to check the clarity of the questions where you're doing a research on a specific industry, could you have discussion just to understand if that, those questions are clear in terms of how they're phrased?
Yeah, that's called external validity.
Okay.
So they're not filling it in, right? They're just checking, etc.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Yeah. So you're not collecting data. You're getting feedback on the instrument to collect the data. That's pre-fix. So you're more than welcome to go there.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Cool. Mapula, e-signature is fine. Yeah, agreed. No problem. Mbali, come off mute. Where are you, Mbali? Mbali, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, Mbali.
The
24.
10
Please
years.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
this
it's
is
the
the
10 years and it means I cannot save it on the Gibbs drive. Okay.
You're confirming that.
All right.
Makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Cool. Brilliant. Okay. That's a best practice interviewer who cannot read or write consent question. So they cannot read or write. And then Karabo, what you will do is number one, that would be often said, okay. Then what you are going to do, Karabo, where are you?
I'm here. Hi, Minaj.
Right, Karabo. Here we go. Is there a risk that the researcher is not, competent in one of the subjects? So let's assume that, or does the subject risk possible harm or disadvantage by participating? Maybe they don't understand the research. Can you see this number 9 or 10?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And then how are you going to get over that?
All right. So in terms of, sorry to hog the time here. So in terms of consent, so even if I could have the consent form, have them to put their X, support that with a audio recording of explaining the consent form in their language, and then support. Would that be considered sufficient?
Yeah, but then you need to tell us that.
100%. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Brilliant. Okay. So I'm gonna say, Karabo, can I just come back? I can say yes now, but if when you don't submit it and it gets rejected, you can't say, but Manoj said it's fine.
No,
It's not
I
on
understand. Yeah,
it's not on the application form. You know what I'm saying?
I just wanted to understand the
Yeah.
principle. Okay, 100%.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to come to the hand down, Leon. Let me just take Alt F. Can we state on the consent form that we'll be using a transcribing digital tool? Yeah, you're more than welcome to state that, Alt F, so they know what's going to be used, and we also want to know. Neo, I just now come here when you're answering. Am I calm? Yeah, no, I am, colleagues. We must have a little bit of a joke, otherwise, I'm just trying to make sure, you know what happens, colleagues, here, is we often think about these separately, and then we often want to say, okay, but what about, but the eventualities are not really there. I think sometimes our imagination is much broader than what we're actually doing here, which is just collecting data for research, right? Okay. Cool. For any clarity questions arising during the interview, do I know? So Ramatla, no. Obviously, they're asking you, so what do you mean by artificial intelligence as an example? But you didn't have that there. You're going to explain. What we want is the guiding questions that you'll be asking. So we can see from those guiding questions which way a conversation is likely to go. Will it still keep you and the participant in a safe space there? Okay, so just take it from there. So that's no. Nombuso, is there a recommended Nombuso that you'll ask your supervisor? Kuseli, will the consent form grant Gibbs any rights? Kuseli, please explain that.
So in the consent form that the participant will be signing, will it be granting any rights to you to like store data to both the researcher and Gibbs? And because you said the NDA Gibbs won't be a signatory to any NDA. And I'm trying to find out whether the consent form that the participant signs, does it grant any specific rights to Gibbs as far as the storage and that kind of stuff of the data? I assume it would for me as the researcher.
So they're giving you the data, right?
Uh-huh.
So why did they not giving it to Gibbs? You giving it to Gibbs. Does that make sense? I'm missing your question.
Okay, maybe.
I'm not, you see, I'm not getting in the middle of this, right? So you're going to interview Ian. I'm Gibbs, you're the researcher, Ian's the respondent. I'm not getting involved with Ian. You are dealing with Ian. Can you see that? The moment I'm
So
assured,
maybe.
if the consent form is granting Gibbs any rights to the data, then I'm getting involved between Manoj and Ian. I'm not getting involved there at all.
I'm saying because we have to submit the data to Gibbs and Gibbs will be accessing and storing that data.
So we may access it under the policy. We will not do it without anyone knowing. Essentially, it's only auditors. There's a very special reason why we don't even access that data. We're not going to go and publish out of it without consent. Does that answer
Okay.
it?
Yeah, maybe it'll be clearer when I actually see the wording on the actual consent form. Maybe I'm asking a question that will be clearer.
So you can have a look at that. They're in the books, in your purple pages, green pages. Those have been available in there already. Okay, cool. Let's go to the next one. Do we need all participants to sign confidential letters and submit? No, Jacques, no. Remember, it's a pro forma consent statement, not a confidentiality statement. It's a consent statement that assures confidentiality in it. Have a look. That's what they need at the end. Yes, we do need to see that they do have it at the end. Okay. Rochelle is saying legal wise. Yeah. Rochelle, yeah. You know, when there's a lawyer in the house, they're trying to find a way to mitigate risk. Okay. Okay. So there we go. Let me just see. I've got one more here. It says, if you conduct a pilot study, use the study to refine your questions. Then you, yeah, Captain, come off mute.
Yeah.
So I answered this question earlier around pre-testing questionnaire.
Okay.
Okay, I said how? Let's think about that, Captain. My job is to preserve the rights, etc., of all participants, but you're on a pre-test before ethics. I haven't given you permission to collect data yet. So what are you pre-testing?
So up to the ethics clearance, right? Because obviously I'll submit the questions, the schedule for my questions. And then once I've obtained ethical clearance, and then I use that to conduct a pilot study. And during the pilot study, then I identify that some of the questions they need to be refined or refined. And once I've done that, do I need to submit again for approval?
So your question has changed. I approved X, but now you want to ask Y. Have I approved Y?
Okay, so I guess I need to submit it. And then
You have to do that.
The next question is that for the pilot study, do I need the participant to sign do I need to obtain permission from them and keep records of that?
Are you collecting data?
I am sort of collecting data, but not for the purpose of it, but for the purpose of
Are you collecting data from someone? It's either yes or no.
I am collecting data.
I know I'm sounding harsh, but do you understand where I'm going with it?
Yeah.
I can give you feedback, but then you haven't told me, Manoj, it's going to be anonymous or confidential. Now you're going to use it because I didn't sign the consent form.
Okay, I get it.
Cool. Brilliant. Okay. Cool. Spoo, data accuracy versus ethics of recontacting. Am I allowed to reapproach participants after interviews if I need to clarify, probe something further? More than welcome. No, I mean, you're still going to be broadly within the same set of questions, etc. So you're more than welcome to continue with it. No problem at all. Okay. Pule, but Gibbs is involved when you submit the data and we issue your degree, Mapula. That's when we are involved. Are we allowed to reach out to our interviews before ethical clearance approval to start securing interview dates in Bali? I wouldn't. I would not. Okay. So here in Bali is the reality. Colleagues, and it came up earlier, Bali decides, okay, I'm going to get hold of my interviews and I'm going to start interviewing Bali. I'm just making up a date here. Please, colleagues, I'm making up a date, okay? On the 25th of June, I'm going to interview SAS. That's you've already got, but you're still going through the ethical clearance process in Bali. Now you submit on the 16th of June, you get declined. You wait now, you've got to resubmit because we said once a week, you submit on the 23rd and the ethics committee declines again. But now you've got an interview on the 25th. Bali, do you see what's the risk you run now? You don't have ethical clearance.
Yeah.
Bali?
Okay.
Yeah. Do you see
Yeah.
that? I can say I'm just being practical about that. Okay. So that's it. Okay. Cool. Poking, go for it. Sorry, I kept your hand up there for long.
Thanks. It's a follow-up from Kuseli's question. And no, I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's quite an important question.
Yeah.
So I'm not a lawyer and I'm not trying to find
I
any
love
law-
lawyers. My wife's a lawyer. Yeah.
I'm sorry to disappoint you. All right. So, and I hear that, we're trying to be careful about the rights of everyone. And I think this follow-up is because of that we also would want to protect the rights of everyone. So there is a form on the purple pages, but this one is for copyrights. And in there, the declaration suggests that you are transferring some form of rights to the UP in the submitted work, considering that the submitted work also includes raw data. I think that clarity is necessary so that when we approach these organizations, we can be clear about it. The other thing that I want to comment on is the 10-year retention. You did say that if the organization doesn't allow you to retain the data for that period, you'd need a letter from that organization. Well, the committee would need a letter from that organization, and it might be prevalent because, well, it depends, because organizations have retention periods. Some of them are legislated. And so would you advise that if they can't satisfy the retention of 10 years, would you advise us to stay away from such?
So again, I know the world changes, right? And I'm heavily involved in the data space, just broadly. Okay. In the last 15 years, it's never been a problem. Okay. So as a data retention, so let's assume what is the data that you're going to be getting that they don't want retained under their policy? An interview, marketing reports that after 5 years you must destroy it. Do you understand? Like, what is it?
No, I hear you, but it could be financial statements of whatever. You don't know what it is. They would have their own rules. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're now saying to you, no problem, send it across, but we want it destroyed in the next five months. But actually, okay, now you've got it today, which is June, plus 5 months is going to take us to November. We're in problems now. Can you see? So if it's a 5 month, then when will we get a chance if your examiner raises a concern about your data, but under that part? So let's assume, let's fast forward to December 2026. You've graduated, all is cool, and they say they want it deleted, etc. Give us a letter, and the ethics committee will have a look at that. And then you'll upload that letter to say this organization that I collected this letter from, and the ethics committee will say this is fine, no problem at all. Or we'll deliberate around it. So we're not unreasonable, right? We're not trying to say it's impossible. Okay. So let's deal with your first question, your copyright. When you finish with your thesis, let's assume it's a thesis here, it's copyrighted to the University of Pretoria. We own the rights to your thesis. It's a copyright form.
But it talks about submitted work. It was in relation to the raw data. You know,
Yes. Not your raw data. It's your final document.
Manoj,
Your raw
it's
data
just a
is
final document. That's fine.
sorry,
that's it.
Manoj, can I
Okay.
just come in there?
Yeah.
So sorry, guys. This is a conversation we usually have with the students towards the final submission. Your raw data is not for us to use. We don't actually look at it unless, one, we are being audited. And auditors want to make sure that you guys have actually conducted the research you said you've conducted. Or two, there is a concern raised during examination on whether or not the data collected is viable, and then a investigation needs to take place. Your data is completely under lock and key. We do not use it. We do not run any articles off of it unless you specifically would like it. It's still your data. We simply maintain it for auditing purposes and to prove that you have done everything in the potential of actually doing a research. So at no point is that data compromised in terms of used elsewhere. It's simply for our auditing purposes. Thank you.
Thanks, Junjun. John, last question here for question 12. In quant research, are control variables age, gender, or size same as identifiers? No, those are control variables. They're not identified to a specific organization. So no, they're not identifiable. When we talk about identifiers that this is Manoj, this is XYZ organization. So it can be easily drawn to the organization. Okay, so identifier is that. Okay. Cool, let's take the question. Luella, go for it.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Hi, Manoj. So quick one. I am in a little bit of a back and forth. This is case study stream, right? So global company, but they technically, to some degree, want to limit consent to South Africa. So what I want to understand is that, does that affect ethical clearance, knowing that GIBS is a global, I suppose, you know, the standard is global, right? So yeah, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but so there's conversation between getting global consent or being able to use their data in that manner, or just South Africa based because the university is based in South Africa.
So, Luella, you're doing a case study, okay?
Yes.
You're doing it on a multinational corporation.
Yes.
You know, who's the boss of the multinational corporation that has the rights to sign this off to say that this case study is valid? Do they sit in Germany? Do they sit in Antarctica? Do they sit in South Africa? And you get it from Switzerland. They need to give permission because they're ultimately accountable and responsible for the multinational corporation.
Okay, so if it comes with contingencies, then that would be a problem for ethical clearance, I'm guessing.
Well, we don't know what the contingencies are, right? So we deal with that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
In general, I've never seen it come across, though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jitendra, go for it.
Question on survey platforms. Do we have to have a platform that tracks IP?
What?
IP address. Yeah.
So they all track an IP address by default. So if you're going to use it, as long as it's not identifiable, that's it. We're fine. If you assure me anonymity and confidentiality, and you track my IP and it can be drawn back to me, you're in trouble.
Okay, but for purposes of audit, do we need to be able to provide that? Because Google Forms doesn't track that. No.
No. I don't need to see 1.168.08.1.1.2. I just need to see, strongly agree, you understand the response from the person. That's it, yeah. Okay. But it'd be nice to collect that data and actually check how many of those are static IPs.
Yes, because you did mention something about that in the PG research. And I'm just saying that the tool that I'm going to use probably doesn't track that. So
don't track it. Actually, don't track it. The less you track, the better.
Cool.
We trust. Trust is our default. The trust is then broken. Cool. Okay, colleagues, great. So that's obviously the big one, colleagues, here, which is, section B and or type B. Type C, colleagues, the easier one, and I'm going to say easier because it's publicly available data. So this is data you can get from the World Bank, etc. So public non-human data. So think about your World Bank as an example, or other databases. Think about, you've got access to databases at Gibbs that have got lots of raw data there. So just tell us the nature of the data is public, so it's available to people. Clearly describe where the data will be obtained from. It must be clear that this data is in the public domain. So give us the websites or the database names at least. Okay. Now, the only piece that I often say you've got to be very careful about here, colleagues, is this whole notion I have access, therefore everyone has access. The immediate one, and I'm sure some of my colleagues here from the PG DIP will remember me saying this here. One year we had a student that said to us, no, this data is publicly available. And I looked at this and I said, okay, but can you please give us the URL? The moment we submitted the URL, I clicked on the URL. The first thing I needed to do was enter a username and password. So I said, this is not publicly available. And then the student said, no, here's my username and password. No, you can't now give me something because actually your company's paid for that intelligence. So it's not publicly available. Okay. So what I say for everyone here, if you're going to get data, just give us the URLs, worldbank.org, statssa.gov.za, whatever it is, just give us the URLs or the database name so we can satisfy ourselves that this is in the public domain. Okay. Remember, colleagues, we're here to protect yourselves, but all other stakeholders as well here. So please, this is an easier one, but yeah, that's what public data is here. So we just want to be very clear that this data is in the public domain. Okay. And then finally, colleagues, and I think someone asked this earlier here, company-specific non-human data. Non-human data being marketing reports, etc., that come into this here. So think about those financial reports. You've got to specify the nature of the report for us, confirm that permission has been obtained to study. So you'll give us a letter. Who in the organization authorized the use of it? So you'll tell us what's their name and their job title. Do the company or companies risk possible harm or disadvantage? As long as the answer is no, we're happy. If it's yes, to explain the type of risk essentially that is being done to minimize or mitigate this risk, and how will confidentiality and anonymity be assured, which we're going to get into. For type D, what do we require here, colleagues? It's private organization specific non-human data, financial statements of private companies, because others are listed, on their websites, etc. That you can easily get. That will fall under public data. We need an approved and signed permission letter from the relevant person in the organization. Okay, so let me stop there. So that's type D. So any questions around type C and D? Let me go to the hands because there's nothing in the chat. Let's go to Tabani. Go for it.
Hi, Manoj. Thanks. For type D, generally, of course, financial statements is the most touchy one. What if we kind of negotiate with the company to, you send me your financial ratios. Don't send me your financials, just send me the ratios and I analyze. Can we do that?
That's secondary data, right?
It is.
Is it still belonging to the company?
Okay. Okay, but we can use that method to just narrow the risk appetite.
Up to you and your supervisor.
Okay, cool.
I'm asking, is it belonging to the organization?
Yes, it would be belonging to an organization. Okay.
Then we want permission. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Okay. Prashana, go for it. Are my people on your cameras? Oh, I'm getting lonely. Jennifer, someone on camera for me. I need some. I feel like I'm speaking to a black wall here or just a dark screen. Go for it. There we go.
All right,
Limon is at least
Manoj,
live.
I think I asked the question just now, just regarding B. So I'm using a private company, but I'm just doing surveys. So I'm not doing anything where I'm taking any financial records, etc. So do I just go along with B? Then because it says non-human data, but they are filling in stuff regarding let's say, their salary range or stuff like that. It's not required that I need to do this part, or is it required? I think is the question. I'm a bit confused. Do I do both B and D, or do I just do, because it's their information, but it's in a range. So it's not accurately stating that I earn X amount, for example.
Still the information.
Okay,
Still the information. So
okay,
just think about it. Yeah. So Prashana, let's just play this backward, right? What we're trying to mitigate that this is not you who's got access to this information and you're just going to use it because you've got access to it. Can you see that? that even if you've got access to it, that your boss has actually said, sure, no problem, you are more than welcome to use it for research purposes. Do you see that? Otherwise, your company, the company says, but where did you get this from? We didn't give permission. So that's why we go that way. Okay.
That answers it. Thanks
Cool.
a lot.
Okay. Let's go to Paul King, and then I'll come to the chats.
Yes,
Hi, Paul
thanks.
King, you must switch on. Let's see.
One day is one day.
I'm not
So
answering.
I just want to ask, all right, just hear it and think about it, okay? So I just want to ask, so you know, public institutions, they would make their strategies public. So I've actually just checked, and you can download it and read it. So let's say I just want to speak to somebody within the organization to clarify certain things in the document. You know, you're not going to be following the schedule. Should I, yeah.
I'm going to speak to them. I'm going to interview them.
Yes, it doesn't matter that you're not going to follow the interview guide. It's really about the document itself.
I want to see the questions you may ask them.
Okay.
Okay, let's. You're trying,
Then what it means is that one would have to read it before and consider the questions that they have so that I can include them in the clearance.
No, otherwise you just come for ethical clearance again, right? Remember what we're trying to do here, Booking. Can you see this first one again? I know I keep going back to it, right? From risk, harm, or exploitation. So let's assume you find whether it's public sector or whatever, and you decide, no, I just want to find out about this bad year you had, the bad financial ratio. Do you understand? Like, it just puts them in a... So we need to see that, okay? I hope it makes sense.
It does. And I know the answers are obvious to you, okay?
No, no, but this is it's important. Can you see how I'm trying to demonstrate it? And why I'm showing you guys, it's not for any other reason, but sometimes, you know, we just take a step back. Oh, okay, now I see it. So then, colleagues, if I do this, if I tell you if I do this, I promise you most of you will get through ethical clearance the first time, not the second time.
Super. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Darren, go for it.
Yeah, Manoj. So I just want to clarify something quickly. So in terms of the ethical clearance, if we go the survey route, right? My view is that based on it's rather to have your, how do I say, array of questions that you can cater for all scenarios when you apply for the ethical clearance. Would that be ideal view? Or just so that we don't, so later when you want to add something, you don't have to resubmit.
Yeah, look, I mean, you're more than welcome to do that. Your supervisor will stop you.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Don't play games. You see, you're asking the other side. You're asking the other side. Let's just fill in all the sections. Like someone asked me at the front. Don't do that. That's
okay.
You're actually giving yourself more work, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But
Okay. Yeah, I'll take it offline with my supervisor. And then the other part, sorry. So anything like financials, I hear a lot of the financial parts, but we see that companies publish for the to the public anyway, right? So like say for instance, apps has financial integrated reports that you can get over the internet. We can use that, but of course it will go under the public, right? Because it's easily accessible and available, right?
It's in the public space.
It's in the public space, yes.
Type C.
Okay, cool. So then we will just declare it as that then, right? Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, let me stop sharing. Let me go up here. Are company integrated reports that are publicly available under section C or D? Okay. Maclino, do you want to come off mute?
Sure. Should I repeat the question or say?
No, I can see the question in front of me. Are company integrated reports that are publicly available? Is it public? It's publicly available, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Type C.
Okay.
Type D is company specific, non-human. So companies were not publicly available.
Okay. All right. Now, I think the financial statements piece example threw me off a bit, so I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
No, that's it. Okay. Paul, you are my legend. Guys, it's getting too technical. We should stop finding ways not to seek ethical clearance to maintain progress. Everyone, come on, give Paul a huge round of applause for saying that. Okay. Jacques, do we need all participants to sign these confidential? That's right at the end. I think, sorry, Jacques, I think I answered that. I don't know why
No,
it's
I don't
coming
know
up.
why my
Yeah.
question is coming up the whole time on your end.
Okay, I've got it here. Yeah. Okay, captain's asking for interviews. I'm going to assume, yeah, that's the last one that came through on your thread. One must submit a consent form that will be signed. Yes, that's it, Captain. So yes to both of those questions that you've asked. Okay, brilliant. Okay, colleagues, let's get into the tail end of this here. So we finished on the type A, B, C, D. Now, we spoke about consent statements, colleagues. So you'll see that we do have pro formas in whichever books you've got, green, purple, etc. Whichever books, please just have a look at that. So we've got the pro forma consent statements, okay? So consent statements where applicable. Now, remember, you don't always need a consent statement. It depends on the type of data you're collecting, okay? When we review consent statements, colleagues, what we are looking for, so let's assume you're doing an interview or you're sending out a survey. What are we looking for? We will look that participation is voluntary. Okay, so the first thing I look at on your consent statement is that participation is voluntary and that the individual can withdraw at any time without penalty. So all consent forms must clearly state that. Okay. And then consent forms must also indicate the time investment. So this time investment is very important. So if you look at the pro forma that we have, colleagues, in whether it's the green or the purple pages, etc., that you have, just have a look at these consent statements that we have. What we are looking for is it must clearly state participation is voluntary, they can withdraw at any time, and how much time is required. So that's the first set that I look for. Now let's assume, let's just play this out, because Darren was the last person here on the thing, and let's just assume he's now going to send me, Darren, remember you said you're going to send me a whole bunch of questions in your survey, just to cover every eventuality. So Darren, in his entire capability of wanting to do eventuality, he submits 150 questions for his questionnaire. Okay. Now what happens? I say, okay, no problem. You're going to ask 150 questions, no problem at all for your survey. I look at your consent statement, and your consent statement tells me, the time investment is 7 to 10 minutes. I'm like, yo, Darren, in which world is going to take 7 to 10 minutes to complete 150 questions? Rejected. So now do you see where we've got to align the two, okay? But then Darren says, maybe not. Hold on. Maybe, I'm going to put 150 questions and I'm going to write on the consent statement, it's going to take you 45 minutes. But I know, don't worry, it's not going to take 45. I'm only going to have 75 questions there. You cannot change the time investment that I've approved to now say I want it to be 7 minutes only. So you've then got to reapply through ethics. So Darren, you're more than welcome to put together 150 questions. Good chance we'll approve it, but then we're going to look at the time investment. So the time investment must match the questions that you are going to be asking. So I hope that makes sense, colleagues. So trying to cover everything there's always a closed loop around this here. Okay? So we've got that. The first thing we always look at is the number of questions. Colleagues, please, right? Yeah, so I like what Mapule is saying. That's what we often do. It will take you anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes or an hour to an hour and a half for an interview, or 45 minutes to 60 minutes. So we just give a range, because what we're trying to really do is it's a psychological contract, I always say, with your respondent. Number one, in general, they're giving you time for free, so be open and honest about it. Okay, so just think about the time investment there. That's the one that trips people up most often. Then the one that does give a bit of headache, okay, is this next one, which is now getting into the technicalities of anonymity and confidentiality. Our consent statements, colleagues, if you are, let me just be very clear about this. If you are going to interview people, so you know that you are coming to speak to Manoj, right? Let me just stop sharing here. So you know you're coming to speak to Manoj. So all of those doing qual, you're coming to speak to Manoj. You know Manoj, so I cannot be anonymous. You know me. Can you see that? Anonymity means you don't know. You can only assure Manoj of confidentiality, that everything you say, Manoj, will remain confidential. When I report the data, listen carefully, I will anonymize your responses. Does that make sense? I'm Manoj. I'm going to offer you confidentiality. So when I report your thing, it's going to be anonymized so people can't draw it back to me. Does that make sense, colleagues? So if you're going to do qualitative research, and you're going to interview focus groups, etc., you can only offer confidentiality and that you are going to anonymize the data or the outputs. You can't assure them anonymity because you know them, but you're going to anonymize whatever they say. So it can't be taken back, okay? I often say, just for qual, you simply state, you have got confidentiality, finish and cloud. I'm doing interviews right now, colleagues. My consent form simply says how long the interview is. They're more than welcome to bail out whenever they want. And the third piece, everything remains confidential. And what do I mean by confidential? That even when I report the findings later on, guess what? No problem. It's confidential, so I have to anonymize it. So what we often look for from a qual perspective, that you are assuring confidentiality. In the case that you do not offer confidentiality, we need an explanation why you are not offering confidentiality. Okay. My base assumption is everyone gets confidentiality. If you can't offer it, then please tell us why you can't offer it. Okay. So that's what we require for qual. So when you're going to do interviews. For quantitative, in general, colleagues, in general, if I'm sending out a survey, I assure confidentiality. So think about our colleague that answered the question earlier, IP addresses, and we offer them anonymity. In general, please, it is in general that I don't know who's filling in my questionnaire, so I can offer anonymity and confidentiality. Okay, so I'm going to come to the hands shortly. So what does anonymity and confidentiality really point out here? Number one, what's the difference? Confidentiality is when the person is known, when you know them through an interview, test instruments, or you're going to do an intervention. Only confidentiality can be offered, okay? Because you need the signature of both the participant and the researcher is required on the consent form. So you're technically saying to the person, don't worry, I'm signing, I will offer you confidentiality. Anonymity, however, colleagues, is when the identity of the participant is unknown and the responses provided in the questionnaire survey cannot be used to identify the person. No signature is required where anonymity is offered, okay? But the questionnaire and survey must still be accompanied by a consent form to effect that participation in the survey signals agreement. This is true for both paper-based and web-based surveys. Be careful with paper-based where you're handing them out and you're collecting it. Sometimes you know the person and you know what, then if you know the person, you can't offer them anonymity. Then we need to know why. You can only offer them confidentiality, okay? So let me take some questions around anonymity and confidentiality. Let's go with the hand first. Leo?
Hi, Manoj. Mine is not on the confidentiality, but I just want to take you back to the section that you mentioned earlier on. Apologies. I wrote on the chat and you didn't respond.
I didn't see. Jennifer, we did. Okay, no, go for it.
Yes. So my question is, I think you mentioned something around the URL. So do we have to specify the variables there, or this is just at a high level to say this is the data that I'm going to use and that's it?
I don't need to know the variables. All I'm checking, Leo, is this data, whatever data you're going to use from there, is it publicly available? That's all I'm checking. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Tabani? You have to on camera.
Show my face this time, Manoj.
Yay! How's it? You see,
here we go.
Now when I see you, then I'm like, Tabani, got him.
Not so lonely. Manoj, on confidentiality, if I'm, for example, interviewing CEO of the JSE, you see where I'm going. I'm interviewing the office, for example, but I need to know the views of the person in office at time. Can I or should I offer that confidentiality, and how would you advise to navigate that?
Yeah, look, I think Tabani, at the base of it, confidentiality is important. What we find is if you don't offer confidentiality, they're not going to be open with you. Your problem is by offering confidentiality, you're creating a safe space to share information that will not go any further. Can you see that? So I often say it's more about the validity and the credibility of your research. That often what may happen if you don't offer that, then they'll be very tepid on it.
And how then do I report on that, Manoj? Because I mean, there's only one JSE. I mean, so it's
so
it
that's
would
an
be
So then what you'll say is P1, listed financial service. So now can you say I made it broad? I'm not saying bank, I'm saying financial service. So now we can be one of 8. But if you tell me, and this happened to us once, female listed financial services, I was like, nah, I know who this is, right? Because there was only Maria Ramos at the time. And I always use that example. So what we then say is then drop all identifiers that will make it. And you'll say there, P1, XXX, XXX, listed company, XXX, why? And you'll put a note there. It's because if I had to give you those 2-3 data points, you'd be able to know immediately which company or person it is. Then you just keep it aside.
Okay. Thanks, Manoj.
So there's ways to deal with it. Cool.
Sure.
Mabula, you want my consent form? The going rate is 75,000 Rand, cash, Bitcoin. I'll give you my wallet. Is that cool, Mabula? Or 75,000 Bitcoin, sorry.
Thanks, Manoj.
Jen, just put our wallet there in the chat. Okay, Mapule, for you, I'll give you a discount, 75 Bitcoin. How does that sound? Yeah, just 75, and we'll drop it in there right now, okay? And everyone can pay you in Bitcoin here. Cool. Okay, colleagues, let me jump forward here because we're coming towards the end. Say here feedback and what we need to make the decisions and give you feedback specifically. Typical errors, colleagues, here is, some boxes have not been checked or too many boxes are being checked. So understand your study, what it involves and does not involve. What do I mean by this? You tick A, B, C, D, E on that form up front, but then I look for the information, it doesn't sit there. The other one, you've not provided enough information to allow the participants to make an informed decision or let the committee judge the extent of the informed decision that has to be taken. So we don't have enough information. Your methodology is too vivid. It doesn't tell us about data storage, doesn't show us the consent forms, etc. Okay. Finally, the end, just a final note here. Everyone must go through it. No data can be collected prior to ethical clearance. They've been granted, including public data. So please be careful about that. And no research project will be sent for marking in the absence of an approved application. Any changes to your methodology, questionnaire, after piloting, the application with changes must be submitted to the review for review or approval again. What are the possible outcomes, colleagues? Because that takes me to the end here that you'll get. Best case scenario, your first outcome is number 1, approved. Okay, we'll tell you good luck and you're more than welcome. Number 2, you are conditionally approved. What does conditional approved mean? Is that there may be 1 or 2 small minor changes that need to be made, but you need to make those changes before you've got to move forward. Number 3, resubmission. Okay. Resubmission, I will give you, the ethics committee will tell you, question 14 is incorrect, question 13 is incorrect, whatever it is. We give you very specific feedback. You've got to address it. Okay. Now, this is an important part of the process. And then number 4 is rejected. Okay. Now, what's the difference between resubmission and rejected? So approved, everyone. I think that's the easy one. Good luck and collect your data. Everything is good. Conditional, very small, minor change, 1 or 2 changes. Please make those changes before you collect the data. Resubmission, colleagues, is an interesting one here. I give you and I say, please resubmit your ethical clearance because question 14, 15, and 27 are incorrect, and your consent statement has got the incorrect time investment. Please correct it and resubmit it. Now, let's just play with that, colleagues. When I say resubmit, and I said only question 14, question 17, I'm making up questions, and question 24 here, and your consent statement. Okay, so those were the 4 pieces of feedback I gave you. 14, 17, 24, and your consent statement. You only need to address those. I cannot now, when you resubmit, say, hey, hold on, but question 2 was also needed a change. So when you get resubmission, you only need to address the feedback that has been given to you. I can't now raise new issues. Can we just be clear about that as an ethics committee member? Okay. But if I reject your application, I get to review your whole thing. So let's just assume I rejected it now for question 13, question 14, question 17, question 24, and your consent statement. But because I've given a rejection, when you resubmit that, I can now look and say, okay, but now given this new information, you've given me question 11 is wrong and question 24 is wrong, 25 is wrong. Please correct those. So resubmission, I can't have a second bite at the cherry, and rejected means I can get a second bite at the cherry. So those are the four possible outcomes, colleagues. Approved, conditional approval, resubmission, rejected, and that's how we work with it there, okay? And then finally, colleagues, and Jennifer, I will leave that up to you from a submission and a process perspective, by what time, what date, etc., and how often the committee sits there. Okay, can I just take the last question down here, Jennifer, and then I'll hand over to you.
No
Fundiswa,
problem.
did I miss your response on the authorized person to sign off on the data? Fundiswa, just remind me on which part of that. Is it when you're collecting data from Gibbs as an example, or an organization?
It's company data.
Yeah, so the person that would be most would be authorized to do so. Depending on the size of the company, it could be, the chief digital officer or chief data officer. Some organizations will be the CEO if it's a small organization. Can you see that? If it's your own organization, another director needs to sign it off.
All right, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. Cool, colleagues. I think that was the last question here. I see, Mapule, my 75 Bitcoin hasn't landed yet, so I can't give you the... Oh, we're talking about ethical clearance here, right? Jennifer, we must be careful about asking for Bitcoin.
You are
I'm
being
joking.
recorded. Just saying.
Cool. Colleagues, I'll hand over to Jennifer. Jen, if you can just talk about, the day and the week and how long it takes to
Okay,
get feedback.
awesome. Evening, guys. So we're doing two parts. The first part is just a schematic of what you need to know about ethical clearance in general. And then the second part is where only people in health stream and people who think they have a health topic should stay on. Manoj and I still want to speak to you about your process. So first and foremost, your dates for ethical clearance are in your green, blue, purple pages accordingly, right? Also, your respective research teams will release announcements confirming your research, your ethical clearance dates. Now, ethical clearance usually is open from, let's say, July until about September, October, depending on where you are at. Right? Please understand the ethics committee meets once a week on Monday, and your ethics application must be in with your supervisor's approval by 9 a.m. in order for it to be in for that week. The ethics committee will review all those that are in by 9 a.m. with their supervisor's approval, and the latest that they can give you feedback is Friday afternoon COB. So it does take them about a week to give you feedback. And as Manoj detailed, their feedback can range wherever, and then you go from there. Someone had asked earlier in the chat if they could have a mistake on the form and they send it to their supervisor. Can it be sent back? Actually, yes. The reason we have the system and not a PDF, it's extremely interactive. So if your supervisor is not happy with what you've done, or you have noted there's a mistake, you can actually ask them to reject the application and it will be sent back to you for corrections. Only once you are both very happy with that and they approve it, does it go to the ethics committee for review. But remember, the ethics committee will only review new applications or resubmissions on Mondays. So for instance, if you get a please resubmit on a Tuesday morning, and you do resubmit by Wednesday, we won't be reviewing it on Wednesday. It will go into the following week's review for the panel, okay? Another thing that was touched upon is what you need to complete on your forms. Please, this is very important. We've noticed every year students do not complete this, and it's one of the most key important parts. There is a section right at the beginning of your form that says, what is your topic title? We need your topic title. It's actually really important for us because what title it is kind of gets locked in with ethics, right? You're allowed to reword it slightly, but ethics actually does determine what topic title you maintain, and we do need it, and the committee can send it back to you as a resubmit or a fix if you do not have a topic title. So please make sure that that is one of the key things you actually add on in order for us to see what is the name of your topic that you are intending to get ethics for. Okay, last part. It was mentioned embargo, and Manoj said I'd speak about that. Now, if you are part of the MBA consulting entrepreneurship stream, you get an embargo automatically. You don't need to request it, you don't need to state it, and you don't need to flag it on the form itself. We automatically will give you, because of the way that those focus areas are built, we don't release your data. We don't once you get 65 and above, you don't go into UP space because of the sensitivity of what you're creating, right? So you do not need to apply for embargo. It is automatically given. Now, for those of you who are not part of those focus areas, but do think that you might need an embargo, that's a little bit more complex. The committee cannot give you an embargo purely on just. You will need to appeal to UP's vice principal, Stephanie Burton, for an embargo, and you need to motivate why you require that embargo. Remember, Manoj said the point of research is to develop and to get, understanding out there, and you do want your research published, and it is quite a great glory to have it up in UP space where you can say, guys, just like Google my name. I'm there. So if you don't want that, they do need, unfortunately, evidence of why with the motivation. Once UP gives you the letter saying, great, it is embargoed, when you apply for your ethical clearance, you will also submit that letter, and then your embargo takes place. If you think you might need an embargo, please do contact your relevant research teams, either for Rembu, for the MPhils, and myself for the MBAs. So that will be what happens. So, Princess, you say for consulting, you don't have a single title. That is fine. I think in the area where you're saying, where it is topic, say consulting, and then just give us some brief keywords that we can use in order to identify your research. Same keywords that you used when you were applying for a supervisor. When the lead asked you for that. Just something to give us an indication of what it is you are actually doing with your toolkits. That will help us. Beyond the embargo, I think we did speak about NDAs for transcribers. If you do need an NDA, it is available on demand. We haven't posted it in our courses, to my knowledge, for now. But if one is required, please do contact your relevant research team. I think that's it. Are there any questions based on what I just asked? The silence tells me.
Doesn't look. Prashana says, my supervisor stated that ethical clearance opens on the 24th. We follow the green pages.
Yes, please follow the green pages.
Who's the supervisor, Prashana?
Mr. Magwegwe, Dr. Gwegwe. Dr. Megs. I don't know. Yeah.
I'll speak to him right now.
Okay, please follow the green pages. It is where we actually have the correct dates for the MBAs. Please don't listen to anything else. We always say, please use our documents. We have the correct dates, and should it go live earlier, we'll let you know via an announcement on your respective research courses. Thank you. Okay, Manoj is on the phone with Frank. Student at Gibbs, do we need an NDA when conducting a survey in a company? Manoj?
Sorry. NDA?
So, student at
no.
Gibbs.
I don't know who student at Gibbs is. Yeah, sorry. Do we need an non-disclosure agreement? No. Why would you need a non-disclosure agreement? Sorry, student at Gibbs. Just get clarity around that.
Good evening. Basically, I'm conducting a survey with my own organization as well. We'll be part of the people that I'm going to contact for survey. The company is quite very strict. So they may ask an NDA. Do I have to submit it?
In the case like that, because you're collecting data from a single organization or multiple organizations, it's a case study.
Multiple organizations.
Yeah. So I know.
But different. Sorry, let me reformulate. I'm going to collect my data from different organizations, but some of them are very strict in terms of interviewing the employees. So they may ask
no,
for it.
no, it's not an NDA then. You need a permission letter from them that they're allowing you to conduct those interviews.
But if they ask me that they need a letter from Gibbs,
Remember, I can't sign surety on your behalf that what you're going to do with that data. Remember, sorry, let me just pull it up here. It's up here. So let me just show you here. Remember, we can't stand surety. Just roll back. There we go. Hope you can see that. Sorry, not here. No Gibbs staff member or Gibbs research affiliate, including supervisor, members of the research committee or management team, will be allowed to sign any confidentiality agreement that may be required by a company, institution used to conduct research on. You can sign an NDA that you will not do anything with the data, but we can't because we don't. They're giving the data over to you. Can you see that?
okay, yeah, I agree. And if the company says, we need a letter of evidence showing that you come from Gibbs, you're a student.
That
Do I
you're a
do I have
registered
to submit
student.
such letter?
We do have
Then-
a student confirmation letter in that regard that we can give on request. Yeah.
Okay, so who is the person that I need to speak to get such letter?
Your respective program manager or your respective research program manager. So you just request, and it's just a simple letter confirming that you are a student and that you're conducting research as part of your degree.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Martin's asking Jim if I have two supervisors who should approve my ethical clearance.
That's usually the supervisors. Have the discussion with both of them, and they will tell you who will be taking the lead on ethical clearance, and that will be the person who can sign. It's usually dependent on what they discuss and who agrees to take lead on ethical clearance.
Cool. Okay, colleagues, if there's no other questions, I'm going to release all students that are not in healthcare. If you're in health, doing any research touching healthcare, health industry, etc., I'm going to ask you to please remain back. So we'll give a minute. At 2010, we will kick off only with those in healthcare. Okay. Brilliant, everyone. For those remainder.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Say bye. Jen, we'll give it another 30 odd seconds and assume whoever's staying
Is health.
Health.
Okay.
I'm freaking out with what? 36, 5, 4. 34 people doing health this year. That can't be right.
Mine isn't updating as fast as yours. I'm still on 36.
I'm on 35 minus 2. So
Sorry, I don't think I'm in health. I just wanted to ask a question just to make sure that I'm actually not in health, right?
Yeah.
So my topic is around supply chain disruptions in the medtech industry, right? Which actually supplies to health. So I just wanted to check, would you regard this as being in health? No, right? Even though
you're talking about the supply chain, you're not talking about patients. Yeah.
Okay. Okay then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yay.
Hey, we're sitting at 34. How have you got 32?
I'm minusing 2, me and you. Doing health research now.
Okay,
Okay, let's go there. Is it Lua Logi? Sorry, the names, how they appear on Teams is...
No, that's quite fun. Thank you. My name's Luvini. And I suppose I'm also one of those that is just asking for clarity. My study is on leader well-being and psychological safety. Do I stay or should I go? Bye-bye. Have a fabulous evening.
You are in HR, Rona. Don't make it healthier. You are HR.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, my people are gone now. Okay, Jen, we're down to 18 now.
We should
17.
have at least, I
Five.
think, 3 to 4 students confirmed.
Sorry, colleagues, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Okay, let's go. Okay, surprise, what is yours in health? Let's go quickly, Jen.
Yeah.
Surprise?
I think
Surprise has
Surprise
been
has
having
left the
supper.
building.
Surprise is having supper. Uh-oh. Surprise. Okay. Kitamitsi?
Hi, Manoj. Can you hear me?
Yo, are you in health?
I'm in the healthcare stream. My research is on value-based healthcare. Yep.
Ooh, good luck. Unati's
I know.
iPhone, you gotta stay here. Unati's iPhone. Sorry, I don't want, otherwise it's pointless having too many people on you. Unati's iPhone. Unati's having supper. Nduma. Nduma. Also having supper. Josephine. Josephine. Oh, supper. Clements. Having supper. Catherine. Yo, Jen. Oh, it's only me, you, and Kitumitsi here.
You've got Anna
Yes.
and Felicia.
Anna, Felicia. Anna, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, yes, I'm
I'm
here.
here, Manoj, as
Cool.
well.
Okay, Catherine said- okay, Sam, Nelly, Sibanile. Okay, cool. I think, Jen, let's kick off with this here. So maybe I can kick off, Jen, and then you can explain the process afterwards.
Yes, please.
Okay, so colleagues that are in healthcare, what's going to happen here? You're going to complete the Gibbs ethics process first, right? So what's going to happen? You're going to complete either section A, B, C, D, E, or A, B, C, D, complete the same process as we've just been through. What will happen? Please get hold of Jennifer that you are in the healthcare space. That will be flagged to the committee. So Kitumitse is an example. What will happen on your value-based care? If all is good, we will give you a conditional approval, Kitumitse, okay? That conditional approval then says you can now apply to UP's healthcare ethics. Is that fair? Kitumitse?
Fair. However, I'm not going to be interviewing patients. I think that's where I'm a bit confused. I'm interviewing industry experts.
Jen, industry experts.
So it's a fine line because it will be determined by the questions as well.
Kitumitse, do you have those questions on the people that you can just maybe just send it to Jennifer and myself, and then we can just get advice, Jennifer, should it go or not?
Not a problem. I'll do that.
Yeah. Jen, let's be sure, because otherwise so we
Okay.
can see what's
Sorry,
happening. Okay.
just to interrupt. I think you can stop recording because those people who are in the session and required are going to be in contact with me.
Okay, but how do, oh, there we go. Pause and stop. Okay, I'm stopping the recording.